welcome everybody to the Men's Sexual Mastery podcast. I am so excited and so honored to be joined by one of my closest friends and mentors in this space of the evolution of consciousness, of healing, of humanity, of awakening. Thank you so much for coming on, Xavier Dagba.
It's a pleasure, Ben. Yeah, it's just a pleasure to be here. And I feel like a horse that is ready to run, and I'm just at the starting blocks now. And everything inside of me is just like, let's dive in, let's have some fun, let's get undressed, let's get naked, you know. Because that's what this type of work is about. If you want to work on sexual energy, it's really about getting undressed and getting naked. So I'm ready for that.
Mm. Yeah, let's bring the sun where the sun don't shine, or
Absolutely.
hasn't historically shined, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah, let's go. I also feel, we had a little drop in just before hitting the record button, and just I'm feeling this chomping at the bit. I can feel so much that's ripe to come out of this conversation.
Yeah.
So excited. So we'll dive straight into it. Um, I wanted to just start by asking you, Xavier, what is it that if you were to answer the question, what is the core masculine wound in the collective in relation to the feminine? This between the polarities that you see.
The core masculine wound right now in this moment, in your relationship to the feminine is what comes up very spontaneously is feeling unseen and feeling undervalued. Across the board, through, as I've worked with many, 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 many men, um, and this is the theme that keeps coming back. It's like feeling unseen and at the same time not knowing fully how to express themselves, not knowing fully how to communicate or to just how to express themselves anymore. It's like one thing that I've keep noticing and noticing is most men feeling lost in the quest of what it looks like to be a man today, what it looks like to not only express myself fully, and at the same time, what does it look like to deal with this kind of core feeling unseen and feeling, not really fully valued, especially by the feminine? I feel like most men are in this time, especially right now, that it's a collective wounding that is um kind of like, you know, open.
Mhm.
And there are multiple reasons in there. I don't want to point the finger. I think it would be playing a game, the games of like, the battle of sexes. Like you did this and you did that and did it. No, it's like this is tiring. It's exhausting. It really is tiring and exhausting. But it's a reality that is present at the moment. Um, the the kind of canvases, the templates of how men use to express themselves um have been invited to shift to a certain degree, and it feels like masculinity is in a liminal space at the moment. And when and some people are embracing the extreme kind of like progressive view of it, or and some people are just like wanting to go back to the caveman. So there's like within this full spectrum, it's like, how do you find this integrated expression of masculinity? And I feel like it's very unique for every single person. But going back to your question, this time, the core uh, wounding that I've seen for many men,
Mhm.
and I'm going to speak archetypally.
Mhm.
I feel unseen and I don't know how to fully show up and even speak of the thing that I really need from you. says the masculine, quote unquote, or that masculine that is lost. What is coming up for you when you hear that?
Oosh. Well, I totally agree and relate. I feel like there's been this long dance of the masculine and feminine, since the beginning. And, what we're diving into here, I think, and this being a great segue, is just going to the root of it all, of this Shiva Shakti, like this energy between masculine and feminine that has not been in harmony actually for
Yeah,
a long time, let's say.
yeah,
Uh, and the ancestral masculine patterns, when we talk about the core wound for me, what comes up for me is that feeling unseen, and that, yeah, in this time right now, feeling unseen, feeling, yeah, not knowing exactly how to show up as a result of all of the harm that's been caused by the shadow masculine, what's been called the toxic masculine, and men, the Me Too movement, and like the shadows being brought to the light of the unconsciousness, and the shame that's associated with that, that many of
absolutely.
us men, I think, carry for what's been done. And one of my favorite answers to this, or themes on this, that I've come across is Luke Cohen recently had a post talking about unworthiness actually
Mhm,
being one of the core wounds. And actually, that being the core wound that kind of started it all.
mhm,
Because when we feel we're unworthy, or maybe also related to feeling unseen, like when we're coming from that space of not getting what we need, what we want, we seek to control,
mhm.
and like that's actually the shadow, what I call like that masculine pattern of manipulating, controlling, extracting what it is we're trying to get from the feminine, not being in sacred reciprocity with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many different components. It's like you mentioned one thing, which is shame. I really think one of the most important relationships every man needs to work on, it is his relationship with shame. It's like, how do I relate to it? How do I work with it? How do I behave when I feel the grip of shame on me? Do I allow that shame to morph into anger? And do I try to express it that way? Or do I allow myself to really be with the sobering grip of shame and to see how it's attempting to awaken me? Um, for many, I mean, working with so many men, I've seen that the standards of masculinity that they put on themselves are extremely crushing. When you think about that, there's first the baseline primal expectation of the masculine, the provider, the protector, and all of these different things, maybe even the leader and all of that. It's like most men feel the um still the kind of like, I want to say, the visceral pull towards that. And sometimes that pull can be terrifying, especially when you feel that you haven't had a lot of there hasn't been a lot of mentoring from other men, or that we often talk about the fact that there are no rites of passage anymore and things like that, especially in the West. So it's like when you look at a boy or a teenager, you know a male that is looking at, okay, I am about to become what is called a man. Even pay attention to the language that we often use. Be a fucking man. It is one of the most terrifying things ever to hear when you're 15 and 14. When you're like, what the hell am I? I'm supposed to be the man. It is
Mm-hmm.
terrifying for a young boy that hasn't gone through some initiation and imagine you are interested in a girl, and there are these natural expectations from let's say you are 16 and 17, you get interested in this young girl, and you're like, what does it even look like for me to show up in this relationship, and embracing even a tiny bit of these attributes? So inevitably there is the feeling of inadequacy that comes up, that feeling of like, the
Mm-hmm.
man is here and I am here. And that can create this Peter Pan tendency, which is like the responsibilities that come with like a man are now so terrifying. It doesn't stop there. It's like you get into this new world where being a provider and being a protector is no longer enough
Mhm.
because we are now in a world where a lot of the things that women relied on men to be able to do, at the very least, the providing part, they can do for themselves.
Mhm.
Once some could argue that for the protection, society at large still needs the masculine because when you look at statistically, I'm not trying to just to undervalue the input of women, but statistically, all the jobs that are protecting jobs like police officer and firefighters and all of that, the 90% are still like, you know, carried by men. So you could say, yes, protection is still kind of expected from the masculine, but provision is no longer the same. It's no longer the same.
Mhm.
A woman can make just as much money as you can, maybe more. And then there is now the spiritual demand that has amplified more, the spiritual psychological ask of the feminine that has increased. It's like, I need you to be aware of yourself, says the feminine. I don't need you just to be the provider, protector, and whatever. I don't need you just to like satisfy me sexually in bed. Not just that. I also need you to be freaking aware of yourself. I need you to be, you know, not a tyrant, you know, and and then some men say, well, I'm gonna be the nice guy. And then some women will say, well, I don't want you to be a nice guy either. And then, you know, and then men are
Yeah.
just like, it's you fucking confusing.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want anymore. And I
Yeah.
don't know what it looks. So I just want to name that to say when it can be it can be unfortunately many women are not seeing the depth of the challenges that men have to go through. And I'm not saying that women don't have their challenges. Don't even get me started there.
Yeah.
So ladies, if you're listening to this, I'm not attempting to downplay what you're going through uniquely, you know, but this is just a way to kind of like talk about how the feelings of inadequacy and worthiness and shame play a big role in masculine self-esteem. Many men lack masculine self-esteem. And that
Mhm.
masculine self-esteem has been, I want to say, targeted, attacked. And there's an invitation to kind of like go back to the roots of the masculine tree and really work the ground again. So yeah, that's what is coming up at the moment.
Oof, yeah, I relate with so much of that. And I'd love to actually go down that rabbit hole of going into the roots of the masculine tree and actually moving through these patterns and evolving and facing, a lot of this unworthiness and shame and, what I would call even just performance anxiety, this like conditional love that is also felt by the feminine in her own way too, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I know for me, as you're speaking about a lot of this, I often, we're linking this conversation, this is the Men's Sexual Mastery podcast. We're going into the shadows of what may be driving some of the, what I would say, like psychosomatic behaviors that can often be expressed in sexuality. And I talk about this all the time with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation. A lot of these issues are very psychosomatic. And at
Yeah.
its core, just to bring in this element as we're going into more what I would call the roots of the tree, the body, the core, the root, the somatic.
Yeah.
For me, I notice these patterns that we have that are actually expressed within the body. In the core of a lot of the training I teach, it's at its core, our healing lies in nervous system regulation.
Mm.
And a lot of what we're talking about is psychosomatic, is the frames and the stories we've been telling about ourselves, the patterns we've inherited, and the ways we show up in relation with the feminine within us
Yeah.
and around us. This is key, right? Within ourselves. And there's a level of evolution in humanity right now, with women's empowerment, with women getting, that freedom to like step into their masculine, which is evolutionary, which, yeah, you and I both fully support. But it's left men in this space to, now it's time for us to actually recognize without the enmeshment to the feminine outside of us, what level of integration do we have with that within us? And can we be coming from a place of completion and bringing that to relationship? Ultimately, I see that as the core of what this work is, as finding in what you do and what I do. It's like helping people work through and massage out whatever tension is there, down into the body form. And it's working when you're breathing more, when you're smiling more, and the programs, it's like updating the software, and that's a lot of what we do in my work too. And updating that until it starts to, like, you have the same body, you have the same mind, but you're shifting the states of being and the ways, the perceptions of reality. You're working out the old programs, and bringing in new ones until we can fully become present with the feminine actually, within us. And that's what I think is what's at the core in my eyes, like going into the root. It's actually inner union that we're moving towards, and coming towards, yeah, just deeper peace and coherence within ourselves, being able to lead ourselves. I say all the time, like, put on your oxygen mask before assisting anyone else. And in this work with men, I always say that you got to take care of yourself first and make sure you're, like, the pressure for you to perform, to care for others, is can actually be a bypass sometimes of you caring for yourself first. Because, like, if it's going to bleed out into the rest of your life, like if you're not in coherence with yourself, if you're in a constant state of fight or flight, dysregulated nervous system, cognitive dissonance, and not feeling at ease within yourself, like, that's actually what the true divine masculine, the fully embodied masculine is like that easeful. I call it the smiling king in our practices. We practice guys, getting guys into the body, opening up, breathing deeper, and working through whatever programs they need to. I do that a lot of the one-on-one work, but being able to bring this level of presence and completion to ourselves and to the moment, and to be coming from an overflowing cup, rather than needing to extract from the feminine, which is the ancestral pattern. We're actually learning it. And through semen retention, or I call it semen intention, through learning how to hold this sexual energy, it starts to rewire. We're bringing it inward, and we're just washing ourselves in our own light and our own God energy until it works out all the blocks that are keeping us from actually really loving to the next
Yeah.
level.
Yes.
And so those are some of the, like, nuts and bolts of, kind of drawing ties in this stuff into, like, the somatic practices and the processes that I guide guys in. But I would love to hear just how you would describe that process of going to the root of reclaiming masculinity in a heart-centered way.
Reclaiming masculinity in general, it's such a big aspect. But if we're gonna first begin with, like, um with every single man I've ever worked with, we explore consciously the things that bring shame within them. And I think the masculine aversion to shame is like, just think about how a masculine the primal expression of masculine power. It's usually kind of like peacock behavior. And this is not demeaning by any means. It's just, we're just looking at what gives us, you know, one can get attached to the feeling of pride. Look how strong I look. Look what I got. Usually when you're looking for, when you look at when you're looking at the primal ways, we sometimes look for a mate. It's like, look what I got. If it's not money and provision and all of that, it's like, look how much I know. Like, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this. It's like, there's an aspect of, like, see what I got, see what I got to give, see what I got to offer, see what I. So that's one aspect of it. The other side of that polarity is complete deflation, and the vibration of being completely deflated is very often tied to shame. It's like, what is your ability to be with yourself in the spaces where you feel shame, in the spaces where you feel not good enough? I think that is one of the most important practices for men. Because usually what we do is we are masters of like escaping these places. Like we
Yeah.
train ourselves so good and like trying to stay one step ahead of everything that causes us to feel shame. And if you pay attention, usually one thing that I will ask most men I work with, what is one thing you do? What is one thing you do just so that you can stay one step ahead, feeling not good enough or feeling inadequate and not feeling shame? What is one thing you do? And what do you think will happen if you allow yourself to go down there to that place where you absolutely feel not good enough? If you ask me the reason why suicide rates are so high for men, that's because of our inability to be with that, to love ourselves there.
Mhm.
We got to take responsibility for that. We cannot transfer that responsibility to the feminine, to anyone else anymore, to society, to culture. We cannot do that anymore and continue and like embrace the next masculine evolution that we invited to take right now. And in order to do that, we even have to reclaim, I'm gonna say masculine sensitivity, but we just have to reclaim first sensitivity as well. And that is the first step of inner union, which is we've worked so hard to shut down the masculine pain body. Every man I know is so good at it, so good at it, repressing the masculine pain body. And the masculine pain body is just an aspect of our own feminine blueprint inside. When you look at just the polarity of things, it is what holds, what is hurting. It is usually what we keep under. And we try to show up this stoic face to the world. Like, I got it together. It's
Mhm.
like one of the most painful and most important things for a struggling man to say is like, in this moment, I don't have my shit together. I am scared shitless. Before I go to sleep at night, I need to numb to go to sleep because a part of me feels like I haven't expressed my full potential that day. Some
Mhm.
days I feel like a waste and I feel like I'm lost. It's like descending there. Like most men need to go through that experience of descension, like descending the places that are screaming, I don't feel good enough. And how can you be with these aspects of you without shutting them down, without repressing them, without trying to kind of like, because our practices are great, but sometimes our practices are also ways that we attempt to stay one step ahead of our shame. You can use breath work to get deeper into your body, or you can use breath work to stay one step ahead of a part of you that is feeling shame. You can use
Mhm.
any nervous system regulation technique to connect deeper with yourself, or you can use the same technique with the intention of like stay one step ahead of your pain. So there's a very strong intent there or invitation. It's like, I need you to descend. And that is the feminine inside every single man that is saying that I need you to descend here with me. I've been holding a lot of pain, and your pain body is at capacity, so I need you to descend here and to meet me. Come meet the young boy that you bring to work every day, and that sometimes feels completely inadequate, that feels lost. Come meet the part of you sometimes that doesn't know how to deal with your lover, your wife, your partner. Come meet the part of you that sometimes feels like you're screwing up your kids. Come meet the part of you that sometimes feels like, I don't know, you're not living up to whatever potential you were put here to live. I feel like that is foundational. That journey of befriending shame without crumbling for a man is so important. And it brings up a new form of, it opens the heart first. And then it enables your capacity to meet the parts of you that are sometimes hurting in silence
Mhm.
with a new form of encouragement. Like a man that is able to meet his own shame is a man that is not easily manipulated.
Mhm.
It's actually a woman that is not really attuned to her own heart. She cannot sustain being around a man like this. because
Mhm.
he's gonna read through any attempt at like, manipulation and deceit and all of that. He's gonna see that because he's at a place where he's no longer afraid of his own shame. It might be challenging at times, but it's no longer gonna cripple him, and his shame cannot be used against him. So I think the first initiation would be there. Can we descend and meet shame again? And look at the parts of you that it's pointing at. And can you go meet all these aspects of you? Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I could expand more on that, but that's step one for me. And we can link that as well to sexual energy and to see all the ways we use sexual energy as one way to discharge our shame or to discharge our feelings of inadequacy.
Mhm.
Let's say you made an attempt to have sex with your wife or with your lover, your partner, and you feel some sort of rejection. And then boom, it's the next minute you're on a porn website because you need to instead of instead of meeting the feeling of rejection or the feeling of pain, you're trying to stay one step ahead of it. So we
Mhm.
flush. We flush. There are so many different ways we flush. So many different ways. Instead of meeting the core of our pain, we're going to use our sexual energy as a way to discharge the pain. So I think for every man, an important question to ask, it's like, what are, and that this question, this inquiry comes from my mentor, Robert Masters. His, he always asks when he's working with men, what are the non-sexual forces that drive your sexual energy? What are the non-sexual forces that drive your, your sexual energy? Like, do do you feel horny when you feeling depressed? And it's like your way to attempt to shift out of that feeling. It's like when you when you feel not good enough or the day was challenging, it's like, do you need like sex right there? And what I've seen, this is my personal experience. The more the more I address the sexual, the non-sexual forces that drive my sexual energy, the more my sexual energy is clean. The less it is driven by impulses. The less it is kind of like, have you ever I mean, most men can relate to this, and probably most women, some women who have been in a relationship that are connected enough can feel into it. It's like when you can feel that you have this urge, to have, you just want to have sex. You just feeling horny, and it is maybe playing a little bit with it's coming from an impulse. It's an urge. It's an urge more than a maturation of desire, more than a maturation of like connection. You feel when there's a natural progression and you with somebody, you're with your lover, and then there's connection, and then there's a maturation of that connection, and that naturally leads to wanting to be physically intimate, to have sex and all of that. And that desire feels a little bit cleaner. And then you have these moments where it's almost like you are unconsciously horny. Like you just want it, almost like an addict. And if you're being asked in the moment, what, I mean, why you want it? It's like, not that you need to justify any great desire for sex, no, but these erratic desires for sex at times, what I've seen is the more I address the non-sexual urges, the non-sexual forces that drive my sexual energy, the more that sexual energy is clean, the more I am directing it instead of having it direct me. And the more I can hold my power, regardless of the magnificent beauty of the women around me. The more I can, the more I can actually withstand beauty, real beauty. I know many men who cannot withstand beauty. What I
Mhm.
mean by that is they will be in the presence of a really embodied woman in her like beauty and divinity. The urge is gonna take over. It will be challenging for them to be attuned to the heart.
Mhm.
So yeah, these non-sexual forces, and for any man listening, I would really invite you to. to be with that for a second and to see what comes up. The non-sexual forces that drive my sexuality are. It's a big question. I am aware of that. Uh, but that's a great point to start as well.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah, man. This is going deep. And I relate so deeply to that prompt and that question and that approach, because it is the difference between a medicine and a poison is either dosage, intention, right? Like sexuality, money, power, psychedelics, all of these things are neither good nor bad. Technology, AI, they're just powerful. And what they teach in the Tao, a lot of the lineage I've been studying and I teach is that the nature of sexuality is that it binds and amplifies the energy. So you're just turning up the volume knob on whatever's going on inside of you. So it's what you're saying is totally true. Like when we're coming from just this craving and aversion and avoiding what's being felt, like when we stop and catch ourselves that, oh, I'm going to sex for numbing, for a release, the releasing the energy, and to have that brief moment where my mind empties, I have that dopamine hit, oxytocin, and then I'm, back into feeling like shit again or falling asleep. It's this like numbing, releasing, versus coming into the space with deep curiosity and listening and feeling. And like a lot of the work we do too is like moving beyond the programming of porn, which is like for the most part, by and large, our sexual education. Like I don't know about you, but I got like a little bit of anatomy in middle school, and then porn, and like porn came before that even for me. And these constructs and programs we have running of like what sexuality looks like, and like what doing it right, the whole performance thing we're talking about as a man, a hard cock, like, and the
Yeah.
whole industry around Viagra and all these, this performative sort of element to men's sexuality that almost like puts more pressure on men to show up in that way because that's how they're taught they're supposed to show up. So
Yeah.
like when we go deeper into, I think, just drawing back from all the unconscious, from the programming, from like what we've been doing, thinking that that's just what is natural, and actually feeling more into the body, which is what you're talking about, developing that masculine sensitivity, integrating the feminine, I would call it, within. And we start noticing like the programs that are running in the background, and we start cleaning that stuff up, cleaning up our sexual
Yeah.
energy. Um, yeah, that's a process over time, for sure. And
It
like
is.
a lot of the work you and I did together, and my own work as well, I do with men now, guiding guys through these processes. And this isn't stuff that like your female partner is going to be able to hold this and like help you process your childhood trauma and shame as a man. Actually, that can be really dangerous and harmful to the relationship, because it's too, like, in my opinion, that's like too much. That's like making your woman your therapist, or like the man child archetype of just like mommy. Like, no, this is us actually like claiming the reclamation that starts from within. And it helps in huge ways to have brothers. I know you've been massive in my path of like integrating my patterns as I become clear, as we go beneath the surface,
Yeah.
sitting with like what is the motivating factor, what is the non-sexual forces that are driving my sexuality and just driving my behavior in general. It could be
Absolutely.
seeking sex, seeking food, drugs, alcohol, money. It's all
Yeah.
coming back to this core wound. And as we learn how to sit with and alchemize and release this tension, which is actually held deep inside the body and be ancestral, then we can show up in clean energy, and we can actually show up, yeah, in like a way that isn't this clinging or grasping or trying to get around, something that's felt in the body that doesn't feel good. Like that's ultimately, if there's one indicator, just to speak to the men out there, of like, it is possible to be coming
It
from a
is.
place. It can be scary at first to like drop all the conditioning, drop all your motivations, be real with yourself about what's motivating you in sex, own it, step back, and then like allow that process to unfold, and then come back into sexuality in a whole new way. and whole
Yeah.
new programs that don't even need to involve a hard cock. Actually, like you can have the most ejaculatory or like non-ejaculatory multiple orgasmic states. You can lead your female partner into the deepest states of bliss and pleasure without even touching her. Actually, like this is what's possible as humans, that like we don't even realize like the power and potency of our sexual energy. And as we drop these programs, that's what starts to awaken within us.
Absolutely. I mean, that energy, I would say for the most part, for most people, it's just a mystery. And our sexual lives are just laced with expectations that we don't even know where they came from. Like, many of them have no real foundations. And just to give a few examples, when I say the sexual forces, the non-sexual forces that drive your sexual energy, here's an example that I've sometimes seen with many people I worked with. Um, I'll not name anyone, but here's an example. Like this guy grew up in a family where his mom was really violent, and she could be, you know, she gave him a nice, good beatings when they were kids. It was just part of their family dynamics, and he always felt like so powerless. It's like this person that you are craving affection from, and that also can beat the crap out of you at times, and so that created a complex where when he was engaged in like, when he was having sex, there was a lot of like wanting to dominate. So it's like the powerless aspect of him that he couldn't express with his mother was expressed in his sexuality. Like kind of like wanting to just purely dominate, like even pushing it. I don't want to give some graphic examples there, but it was the young boy inside of him that wanted to feel some sense of power. And that's just one example. Another example was like, you know, witnessing this, having working with this man, and as a kid, he just witnessed his dad being tremendously brutal or, very abusive, and his mom being extremely submissive, like taking on like the aggression of his dad, and he was never able to do much about it, and how that translated in his sexual life was the being overly cautious, like to the extreme, where he would often say his partner was just like, I want to feel you. It's like, I want to feel like you're taking me just for a second. Like, I'm not asking you to beat me or do anything, but I just want to feel like, you know. So in he went as well to the extreme, like overly cautious, overly nice guy in bed, and it created a whole lot of frustration in their relationship. So it's really important to just have a sense of like where what part of me is that. I'm gonna say that in a very graphic way so that people can really get it. What part of me is actually fucking here? What part of me is actually fucking here? Is it my wounded inner child right now? Or is it the integrated man I know I am and I know I can be in this moment? Is it my heart? Am I engaging in this thing from my heart? Or I am engaging in this thing from like an urge from the past that is not resolved yet?
Mm-hmm.
That is a very important thing to ask. And you see, working with that sexual energy is just gonna cause you to address so many things. Your own leadership, your own capacity to receive. It's going to invite you to address some of your own pain and wounding. It is so thorough, it's so deep, it is so intricate, it's so amazing and confusing all at once. That is how much your sexual energy is touching so many different things in your life. So that's a concrete example I just wanted to offer to anyone who is wondering, what do you mean the non-sexual dynamics or the non-sexual forces that are driving my sexual energy? That's an example of what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you gave those examples. And just for anyone listening, who, as I just want to drive it home that there are processes and therapies and tools that Xavier, for instance, or myself, like, and Xavier, you guided me in this stuff. Like I take a lot of what I learned, even just from my own journey with what you helped me uncover. And there's ways of releasing these things out of the body. I just want to make sure I pin that for people. This isn't just, we're not just talking in the head. This isn't like talk therapy we're talking about. We're talking about actually going deep into the somatic system of the body, the psychosomatic patterns that are held and contracted in the depths of the psyche and the mind and the body, and extracting those and catalyzing or alchemizing those and releasing them so that those programs are no longer running. Just to be 100% clear, like that's what we're talking about in this work. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, just for anyone who's new to this, like that's what we're talking about. So I wanted really quick to actually shift gears with because what you just said, I think kind of brings up a piece, even using those examples of like the BDSM, the guy that was dominating. Because I wanted to actually I wanted to go with you into the shadow and switch gears into a little bit of just my own personal sharing with you and to get your light, within the shadow of just my personal experience. So I'm happy to kind of go deep into, what may be here and to just use myself as a potential map for, in my work even.
Yeah.
This is what I devote my life to, and I'm really tapped into the sexual healing space. And as you know a lot of my story, and the listeners probably do too at this point, the religious upbringing and all the rest. One thing that I wanted to share with you was, coming from my religious conditioning, there's this archetype that I've realized within myself of what I'm calling like the white knight complex, which is like the good boy, the savior, who basically I took on this belief that, which I think is largely based in a lot of coherence, that like healthy sexuality, a healthy sex comes from like deep emotional connection and commitment and like the sacred union archetype, like love and light, and that anything outside of that is like actually manipulative or dark or not in alignment with God or love. So, and with that belief, it's like believing that any woman who's having sex outside of sacred committed partnership or a deep emotional connection is actually being manipulated, and like me projecting that, and not honoring her autonomy and freedom and the possibility, if I were to withhold my judgment, that there could actually be sacred healing and expansion of love, even in just the primal fuck, and so I was curious to kind of bring that to you and chat a little bit about this, how to navigate this space, because there's a part of me that, like, if I release all of that and I just fully embrace my primal desire, and just drop it all, like, how do I maintain my virtue? Like virtue in Taoism is the highest currency, they say, of who we are, while also not becoming the Puritan, like what are your thoughts on like integrating, going deeper into spaces of sexual exploration and freedom in an instance like mine, while maintaining my connection to what's in service to love?
Yeah. I mean, I love this question on so many regards. And the first one would be there's an invitation to look within yourself where your sexual deviant is. Or deviant is how do you pronounce that? I don't know how you pronounce that. Or
Sexual
deviant.
deviant. Oh,
Your
my
own
deviant.
your own sexual deviant.
Like, what's
And let's
driving it? It's the same question, right?
yeah, just look at that as a part.
Okay.
Just look at that as an aspect of yourself. It's like that aspect of yourself could be so free that you could fuck 5 women a day if you really wanted to. I'm attempting to push that to the extreme. If you really wanted, you Ben, if you really wanted to just let loose to like all your urges in a very distorted way, if you really wanted to take away that seal that you've been holding so strongly, that seal that says, I don't want to be. I don't want to be that fucker. And I actually want to ask you, I take the sentence. I don't, the kind of man that I don't want to be is.
Mm. Yeah, the kind of man I don't want to be is a man that manipulates and takes advantage of women.
Yeah. And if I do that, If I lost myself one day and I became that kind of man, what would happen is,
Hmm. If I lost myself and became that kind of man, what would happen is my reputation would be destroyed. I would lose my integrity. When people lose respect for me, I'd be cast out
yeah,
by those I care most about.
yeah, the mere thought falling in that place makes me feel,
Mhm. Yeah, the thought of that makes me feel kind of sadness and anger.
yeah. And one occurrence where I felt the most sexually deviant in my life was
One, what was that? What was the prompt again?
one occurrence, one moment in my
Occurrence.
life where I felt the most sexually deviant was
Hmm. Uh,
I know we're going,
yeah,
very personal, very deep there, and it's up to you to decide in how much detail you wish to share it. So, yeah, you get to think about it.
I'm here for it. Yeah. It's funny. It's not even that sexual. It was like my earliest memory is telling a joke to my sister about a condom or something that I heard at school, and then getting my like just talking about sex, and because I had a lot of curiosity and excitement around it, but I didn't know anything, and I was just sort of repeating what I'd heard because I could feel in my body it was like naughty or something, or like I don't know, it just was exciting to talk about. I didn't even know what a condom was, but it was a joke. And my dad like sitting me down when I was like 9 years old or something, and like I could tell there was a lot of tension and shame and all this stuff, and he was doing the best he could. It's really awkward. So, but
Yeah,
I remember feeling like, yeah, that was like I may have been jeopardized like the love of my father by even bringing this up.
yeah. And in that moment when my father intervened, what I felt most was,
Shame.
yeah, yeah. And what I often do to avoid feeling the same kind of shame is,
Mm. I control my reality to prevent that.
yeah, my relationship with my own sexual energy. Yes.
Mm. Oof, man, this is getting into some really deep software, like in my psyche. I'm feeling into it. I'm feeling this kind of tightness in my body, but also like softening simultaneously. Yeah, I'm feeling
Yeah,
like it's connected to this white knight thing. It's like one of the things I do is just like I stay virtuous. I create a story that like this is what the good boy does, and like if
yeah,
I go like that separation or that story is like what allows me to like almost insulate this shame.
yeah, yeah. There's that insulation around the shame. The shame is still there, but it's insulated.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I got caught by my dad, all I wanted to do was,
Uh, I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know, I wanted to be met with my curiosity to be satiated, but he didn't honestly have the tools or the education even that I have now or that I offer other men. So, but yes, that's what
yeah,
that would have been the most supportive thing was like, yeah, what I really wanted was just to understand and be understood
yeah.
and to not be shamed for my curiosity and my desire to explore this.
What I wish my dad did was,
Mm. I wish he guided me,
yeah,
in harnessing this energy and yeah.
imagine that your dad is here right now and we're going to speak to him directly.
Hmm.
Just imagine that you're speaking from all four. That young boy, there's 9. He didn't know the hell. He didn't know what the hell he was engaging in. Dad, what I needed from you was,
Dad, what I needed from you was just maintaining love for me.
yeah. And I also needed,
I also needed understanding.
yeah, especially, oh,
Uh, Especially, yeah, just in my just supporting my innocence,
yeah,
and not just creating a wall, or like to actually give me some. I just needed the truth, that you also didn't have, but that's what I needed,
yeah,
which is that this is okay, this is a beautiful thing.
yeah,
And in some ways, maybe he did speak that. I'm also like, I just know in my body, it just felt. I remember just feeling like I was being punished.
yeah. Like the shame was the loudest imprint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And to the shameful boy inside of me, what I want to say is,
Mm. Yeah, I feel like my legs are kind of quivering and shaking, like my butt cheeks
yeah,
are kind of like trembling.
yeah. And can you support them? Support them in shaking, just for a moment. If
Yeah,
they're shaking, help them shake instead of like trying to calm down the feeling or like go back to homeostasis. Yeah. If your legs are shaking, shake them.
yeah.
If your lower body is shaking, shake it.
Ooh, man, I feel like so much. I've been feeling it's crazy. This is also synchronistic. We're talking right now, and that you're guiding me in this, Xavier. I've had the last few days just this opening of my pelvic floor, and I feel like it's just very synchronistic and time that it's sort of like, of course, I would be here with you as this is like just like opening. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it feels like a relief valve, sort of like coming up my spine and feeling some of this kundalini, life force, this new sexual energy that I've been deepening into communion with. It just feels like it's like opening up. And so maybe less than even words to my inner child right now, who's the shame boy. It's more just that it's this, what you just are saying, right? What is happening right now is just
yeah,
the body, opening the body of this little boy and just allowing it to be, to bloom.
yeah,
Yeah. I feel that up to
yeah,
my spine right now. Oh.
yeah. And wherever you're sensing it most, I'm inviting you to just get in touch with it. And I'm inviting you to just say out loud, this is godly too.
Mm. This is godly too.
Yeah. Wherever you've felt that tension the most, you can even gently tap there and
Mm.
voice it out loud. This is godly too.
Ah, this is godly too. Ooh. Oh man. Oh yeah. Yeah, if anyone else, just while I'm in this energy right now in this recording, I just want to invite if anyone else is feeling called, or even Xavier, or anyone listening, if you'd like to just place your hand on one hand on your heart, one hand on your balls, and just breathe. That's what I'm doing. I'm just just to share, just breathing into these in Taoism, they call it the upper heart and the lower heart.
Yeah.
Just feeling this connection. It just feels fitting to weave in, Xavier, with what you're guiding me right now. This is
Yeah.
godly too.
Yeah. It's like creating an axis between your heart and your balls or your heart and your genitals.
Yeah, even just those words. I can feel my body just receiving this is godly too.
Yeah.
Just the softening. Cool.
Because usually what we do is we flush out, it's like that energy doesn't get a chance to go up here and we
Mm.
just shoot. When we're feeling the presence of shame or like inadequacy, we have a tendency to just like go towards a discharge. It's like, and this is how malleable sexual energy is. Usually what we often do is blaming um sexual misconduct or sexual abuse, blaming your libido or your sexual drive for sexual abuse
Mm.
is just a complete denial of responsibility. So usually what we do is like, because of our wounding, we're just going to shoot out and as a way to discharge. But what you just, ex- one thing I assume you've experienced this in many other ways, but what you demonstrated is like allowing that energy to commune with your heart, like allowing the dissension of you going and being with the young boy inside of you that felt like the your first experience of, I don't know, just talking about sexual energy in a way that back then was perceived as deviant, was met with so much shame. But just meeting that with an open heart
Mhm.
and resolving whatever is there. This is what it looks like, you know. This is what it looks like. For some men out there, unfortunately, their experiences will be darker. For s- I know many men who have unfinished business with their sexual energy because they've been the abuser in some situations.
Mm.
And you also get to meet that part of you that took it to the extreme. Because if you want to be a healthier man right now, that's what you get to do with your sexual energy. And I also know so many men, they have a dysfunctional energy, sexual energy because they were on the receiving end of abuse, which is less talked about.
Yeah.
They were the receivers of molestation. So there's just so much that gets to be met with an open heart there to
Mm.
allow that kind of like a hub of beautiful energy, godly energy. It has been distorted, begin to circulate again, you know, in the ways it's meant to circulate. So yeah, I just wanted to honor you for diving in there. Yeah.
Yeah, brother. Thank you for very unexpectedly just guiding me into that little mini process. Yeah, I can feel kind of the opening in my body and the warmth, like the fire in the belly sort of energy that, is so potent and so pure. That's what I realized with a lot of this stuff is, and even what you're referring to, it's like it's going back to that childlike innocence, with our sexual energy. And this is, yeah, it's edgy even to talk about that, just that, like when we were kids and just like touched ourselves or touched other kids, or like when you talk about some of these things, like running around naked and just like shamelessness. And, there's, again, there's like this whole process we're all going through of, of processing this because there's a shadow to it. There are, yeah, like all
Absolutely.
sorts of dark things that can happen amongst kids, like as well, just like as adults, we're just grown up kids in these bodies. So like, can we actually get down to the distillation of the pure heart, and from that space move into this energy like from a pure heart, truly. and
Yeah.
and with that it can take many different forms, but I know that that's the way. It's just coming back to innocence and releasing it all. And you're so good at going, I think, deep into the psyche and finding and shadow hunting, and finding these spaces that or shadow loving is maybe even a better word. Hunting almost implies like a predatory energy, but actually it's like, yeah, learning to bring love to the places that have been war within us, like I talk about that. It's like when we resist the resistance, like what we resist persists. And like I
Mhm.
talk about all the time in my training, like, and I'd love to hear even your perspective on this. Like one of the core tenets of Taoist sexual alchemy. One of the first steps in our training is is what's called the inner smile. And literally just stopping no matter where we are in time and space, and just taking a deep breath in and bringing a smile behind the eyes. And just, it's almost like lighting a fire in the void and just like bringing that love and smiling at whatever is in front of us. Like, no matter how ugly, how scary, or how loving and beautiful, like, but the full spectrum, making love with the full spectrum of it. And like, as we bring that energy of love, down into these depths of the shadow and alchemize these core wounds, we can really start to heal and release that hunger, that is like
Yeah.
the unintegrated shadow of just like not feeling well and trying to escape through sex and through any of these things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That
man.
hungry sexual ghost. That's
Oof.
how I call it. That hungry sexual ghost, and no woman is ever enough. No, like, sex is never enough. I need more. I need more. Even coming 5 times a day is not never enough for that hungry sexual ghost. When you enable, it's a pathway in the usage of your sexual energy. When you entrain yourself to use your sexual energy to discharge pain, it creates this kind of like, I mean, I call that hungry sexual ghost, but it's just like a patterning within yourself where everything that is challenging is going to trigger or ignite your desire for sex. Or it can be in many different ways. You can see a beautiful woman and you can feel a lack of self-esteem just by looking at the beautiful woman in the beauty of her energy. And you're just like, oh, for me to actually experience this woman, I would have to dominate her. I would have to actually take her down from her beauty. That's usually how we dehumanize, even in the sexual practice. Like, I need to dehumanize you to feel like I am good enough for you. Many men are engaging in sexual relationships from that. It's like, I need to dehumanize you. I need to take you down away from the goddess to feel like I am now in a position where I can even engage in intercourse with you. There's a lot of that in rape. There's a lot of that. And it's so difficult for to even hear this, even the word rape that I use, but it's so important to even look at that, to even look at like these urges and what is coming from this. It's like this core wound of shame. It's like, I don't feel good enough for you. And you look so beautiful and pristine right now that for me to feel a little bit of like capacity to even um I don't know, keep up with your beauty, I would have to take you down.
Mm-hmm.
No reverence. There is no honoring beauty. So there is so much. In the example, you've talked about wanting to be the white um
White knight.
knight. For so many men, it's so important to be intimate with their inner deviant,
Mm-hmm.
their inner sexual deviant. That's the reason why I brought up this kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
where let's go find your inner sexual deviant, the part of you that would, you know, I would love to just, go ahead and do whatever the
Yeah.
hell you want,
The
and
Dark Knight. The Dark
yeah,
Knight. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you just want to consume sexually, or there's the innocent aspect of it, of the child that is like, that doesn't know much, so innocent and just wanting to explore. And at the same time, sexual energy also needs healthy sexual containment, unless
Mm-hmm.
the impulses will run rampant. But
Mm-hmm.
for the healthy sexual containment to happen, you need to be intimate with the sexually deviant part of you. It's like
Yes.
you need to know your. I often like to ask men when you really work intimately. I'm just like, tell me your kink. Like,
Yeah.
is it big boobs? What is it for you? When you are really in your dysregulated state or whatever, and you just want porn or whatever, when you used to be,
Yeah.
what did you used to go towards? And why? Have you ever wondered why? Have you ever
Yeah.
wondered why you like, you know, big butt or this? It's like it's
Or even
like,
porn that's like stepsister porn,
yes,
teacher
yeah,
porn. Yeah, like
absolutely.
that is a
Step
great
mom.
thread. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, it's like,
beautiful
have
thread.
you ever fucking wondered why? I am, answer the question. I am attracted in this because
Yeah.
what turns me on about this is answer that in fucking honesty. Don't bullshit yourself. You know what is attractive to me in this is what turns me on the most is allow yourself to know really well your sexual deviant. And that part of you is going to give you the key of your own sexual mastery. Because usually, what we do, even in this line of work, we attempt to suppress the sexual deviant.
Yeah.
And it creates this energy with our own, this dynamics with our own sexual energy, which is basically, we are saying, I can't fully trust you. That's unconsciously what many men are saying to their own sexual energy. I can't really trust you. I cannot really fully dance with you because I don't know, you're gonna take over me and then you're gonna go fuck things up and you're gonna fuck up my relationship and I'm gonna go cheat on my partner and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. I can't. Many men, especially the most faithful ones, usually have that kind of relationship with their sexual energy. It's like, I gotta put you under lock.
Uh-huh.
So the containment is usually so tight, like extremely tight. Whereas you can be in a space where the containment is more harmonious, where you know intimately the things, when you've mastered the things that would cause you to be deviant, like you are
Yeah.
so intimate with your inner sexual deviant that
Yeah.
he can no longer hijack you, then you are actually sexual safe man for most women out there to be around because they can feel, oh, your sexual
Yeah.
energy is integrated. They can feel like you're not shooting sexual energy from front.
Yeah.
They can feel, you're not a loose
Yeah.
cannon.
Yeah.
So
100%.
to your first question of like, how do I work with my white knight? Romance your sexual deviant, but
Yeah.
do not let that part hijack you. Just romance it. Let that part of you teach you about your own urges. Like, really, let that part of you teach you about your own urges. And the more you are at peace with that, then you will feel like you're able to hold your sexual energy. You are even able to look at people who are in the most weird sexual tendencies. And you're like, well, if that's what you're into, you know, I
Yeah.
respect that. Go for it.
Yeah, and I would love, yeah, I love that. I love, this is reminding me, Xavier, of a lot of your work around, sacred rage as
Yep.
well, like taking the dragon from the dungeons, and like breathing it up through the heart and learning how to channel and contain and direct this energy instead of just suppressing it. 100%. This feels like another dragon. And when we can bring it into the heart space, for me, a lot of this work, it's an inside out job. When I practiced holding my sexual energy, semen retention, semen intention, as I call it. And I don't know if you've delved in this. I imagine you probably dipped your feet in this, but like
Yeah.
feeling that God energy once you've held it for 2-3 weeks, a month, and it starts exposing all the leakages. It starts exposing the patterns. It's binding and amplifying to any patterns that are there. The cognitive dissonance. It's purifying the channel. But once it's integrated, being able to go to the depths and hold, like for instance, like for me now, speaking about my deviant or like my dark night, like I've been able to go into spaces and hold my energy. It's almost like moving like Aladdin, moving through with all these jewels around and like not grabbing the jewels. I don't know if you watched Aladdin, but it's just like
Yes.
walking for the one thing in the middle, the lamp. And like if you reach for the jewels, it all starts melting apart. Like being with women, for instance, and like doing shibari, or even sexually being with a woman and really tuning into it, listening to her body to the point where like I am in such devotion, in such deep listening. This is what we're cultivating collectively as men, and maybe you too, like where we are in such deep listening to the feminine outside of us because we're in such deep listening to the feminine within us. We're feeling that presence that is like actually the deeper depths of love. And in my work, I tell guys this is what brings on the internal yin orgasmic state, which is 10,000x an ejaculatory orgasm. But when we can alchemize that, I know for me, like being able to, for instance, tying up a woman who's completely naked, who I have no sexual connection with, and speaking with her, creating a container where like I could rape you right now. Like literally, you are hogtied and I could completely take advantage of you. And for a woman to be able to, or a man, like I've tied men up too. If I was in, if I wanted to rape even a man or a woman, like to put someone in that position or to be in the depths of these containers, to allow ourselves the safety, for a woman, for instance, to have that experience with all the ancestral trauma and epigenetics, to be in that space of utter helpless, of complete surrender. He could completely, yeah, just defile me, and he doesn't. Like, to me, on some quantum plane, epigenetically, whatever, like that is breaking the pattern of the shadow masculine, which is, I think, what we began this whole conversation with, and being able to show up in a way that's like evolved, that's actually holding so much more energy. And I'm like feeling it coming out of my fingertips right now, just talking about it, So I really appreciate when you talk about integrating the shadow, integrating the primal, and learning to contain it, but also there's a level for me. What's at the core of that is releasing desire itself, which is actually what's at the core of Tantra. And like,
Tell me
when I'm
more.
in a space where I could have all the jewels, I could have all the orgasmic energy. My partner, like, let's say I'm in a sexual interaction, they're going into orgasm, and I can feel just like being pulled into that vortex, and just all the pleasure that's there. And I literally let go of all of it and just give it to God, or to the divine, or to be in service of the moment, to deepen it and deepen it and deepen it. The more I realize I release it, desire, it
Yeah.
actually allows that completion, of the moment, and
Yeah.
expansion of it into something so beyond what I could ever create
Yeah.
myself.
I celebrate what you're saying there, and here's my understanding when you say releasing desire. What I hear is releasing urges. It's like releasing being overpowered by the impulses, and the impulse of like just like a monkey that would be walking in a hallway with like beautiful bananas around instead of like saying, and sometimes you're not even hungry, but you just the banana looks so good. You just want to it's you just want to take it because the cellular spoke, you just want to grab the banana and maybe hold it and put it under, just see how many bananas you can carry and whatever. It's like there's such a it's releasing lust. It's releasing sexual greed. Because what I see is there is a purification of desire, even.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is it is really clean. It's coming from the heart. And when you choose that you want to engage in, sexual intercourse with anyone, it won't be because you are being hijacked by your program. It would be a communion of love. So
Mhm.
in that, is that desireless, or is that just like desire that is brought to it's really pure core? It's not impulse. It is not urge. It is not lust. It is not like it's just like let's commune. We are let's connect, let's commune. And that's how I see it. Um it's something beautiful that it's not this pressure to come, this pressure to discharge, this pressure to ejaculate. It's not this obsessive pursuit of an orgasm. It could even be like, I've some of the most, you know, um, I've been in a committed relationship for over 10 years. Some of the most orgasmic or beautiful um moments we've had. It's like we were even tapping into the energy of playfulness. It's like when you feel safe enough with somebody, and it's not rich, it's not, I want to say ritual. It is not a spiritual kind of process that we're doing to um experiment some um tantric orgasm in the process necessarily, but it's just the pure playfulness. It's like we are together, we are naked,
Yeah.
and let's play. And it's like the container has been created strongly enough. for the innocence of the child inside to emerge again in that moment. And you're just like, I'm not attached to coming or not. I'm not even attached to like, I just want to play. That is what is possible on the other side of doing this work. It's intimacy deepened. It's intimacy deepened. So yeah, I love this conversation.
Whew. Man, Xavier, thank you for bringing that full circle. Yeah, coming back to that. It's just the pure, yeah, that pure innocence of the child, coming back to this childlike love, the heart-centered love. And yeah, I know that's where it all begins and ends. So yeah, I appreciate all the shares. I mean, we've covered so much ground today. I realize we're coming up on time here.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Just one, if I can say
go ahead.
one last thing about that, bringing the playfulness up. I think this is what many sexual liberation movements are actually looking for. The innocent playfulness that can be experienced through sex when the container is appropriate for that. I
Yeah.
think this is really the feeling that can be that so many people are looking for.
Mhm.
That so many liberation movements are looking for. And I'm not judging any of these movements, but what I know and what I've experienced is that that often gets is something that you get to experience through having unveiled yourself more fully. It's like there's an it's not just let me go out there and bang as many people as I can. This is the sexual freedom. It's like, no, that's the poor man's level of like sexual liberation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's like getting to that place where you are able to unveil your heart in the best of your capacity, especially with people who have demonstrated that they are willing to meet you there. There is something beautiful about it. It's really beautiful. So yeah, that's the only tiny thing I wanted
Ooh,
to add.
mic drop. Last mic drop. And I would just say too, one last mic drop I want to add to that, pin on that is how we show up in the bedroom is how we show up in the world. I talk about this all the time. What we're talking about here is actually just pure presence and acceptance for everything that is. That's what I would say in response to the desire, whether it's releasing desire or the purification, refinement of desire. In my eyes, it's releasing the desire for more, for anything to be different than it is
Yeah,
right here and now, which is the kingdom of heaven that is at hand that Jesus spoke about, and that we as kids we're living in just complete presence, free of all the constructs, of all the control, just pure feeling and communion with what is, and that opening of the heart, like you said, with just those who resonate with it. And this can open up in not just, of course, sexuality is the most intimate, but in like what we're doing right now as brothers, and in business and in friendship and in with your kids and with the earth and your pets. And like it's this level of depth of presence and playfulness and innocence that actually spreads into every area of our life. And actually we learn how to make love with life instead of making war, which is the masculine pattern that has been integrated, moving from war into love. To me, that's the core of everything we're talking about here today.
yeah,
As within, so without, as in the bedroom, so out in the world.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Well, Xavier, I know you gotta run, so do I, but I really, really, really appreciate you coming on with me today. This has been such an epic conversation. And
It's been awesome.
appreciate you so much, man. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for having me. And I just, I can only encourage you to keep moving forward with your work and to bring that out there. And I know that many men and women, and I think this applies to it applies to everybody across the spectrum. It's like how much are you willing to meet yourself in depth? So thank you so much for having me.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Xavier. And thank you also for helping uncover and unlock so many things in me. A year and a half ago, I think we finished our container 6 months together. And I remember you were the first person I opened up to about this guidance within me of stepping into this work. And you helped me so much, like working through so much of this stuff. So I just
Yeah.
want to thank you from the depths of my heart. And also just for anyone that's interested, that feels resonance with Xavier, I first heard you on a podcast, and as soon as I heard you speak, I was like, I could feel like, oh, this man has something for me. So if anyone on here is listening who feels that call to work with you, where can they find your work? Where can they connect with you?
Well, they can find me on my website, xavierdagba.com. On Instagram, I'm also there, Xavier Dagba. Um, but I just want to say something. You could have heard the inner guidance and ignored it. MSM, I remember the first time we talked about it, and I was just like, this is it, MSM, men's sexual mastery. And I remember viscerally how challenging it was for you to embrace it and how much of your own insecurities it brought to the surface and how you argued with me. It's like you were fighting me around, like, bringing this work to the world. And, it's like, just like, that's, just holding space for the resistance itself. And even though deep down you could already feel that it was work that was meant to be birthed. Uh, Where am I going with that? Just your willingness to surrender to your own inner knowing. Yeah, that's what I want to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Well, it's such an honor to be joined by one other brother in this path. And for anyone listening, this is what is unlocked in each and every one of us as we go deeper down this path. You are a puzzle piece. Each one of us is a puzzle piece waiting to be activated as part of this grand puzzle of love, of coming online and waking up from our own dreams and becoming the heroes of the story that we chose to be born into. So let's fucking go. Thank you so much, Xavier. So much love to you, my
Pleasure, brother.
brother. And we'll see you
Thank
soon.
you so much. See you soon, brother.